Many years ago, when I used to live in Blackburn in Lancashire, I think it was about 33 years ago, something like that now, I was drinking in a pub there, a pub called the Ribblesdale in Blackburn, and I got into an argument with a chap there and his friends, which resulted in me getting beaten up, not terribly badly, but I did eventually lose a tooth, which I've still got missing now. And to be honest, my memories of that occasion are pretty vague really right now, and I can't honestly say it's a big significant moment in my life really. But one of the things I remember about that very well, which I'm sure other people have had in slightly different forms, is that, you know, when somebody's lurching at you with a fist or a bottle or something like that, or a boot, what you do is you curl up into a ball. And it's not just it's not just about protecting your eyes or consciously thinking, "Oh, I must make sure that the top of my head's safe." You know, it's nothing rational about it like that. There's a kind of infolding, so that you protect your center. You know, it's almost as if as if evolutionary history is propelling you to protect your vital organs, to keep your brain intact, to make sure your heart, your liver, your spleen doesn't get kicked in, and also protect your reproductive organs. Incidentally, men particularly, I think, curl themselves around their reproductive organs at those times. So, and it makes great sense from an evolutionary point of view, I suppose, if you are under threat, to protect the center. And I think I've spoken before about how that semi-automatic protective reflex in those situations is mirrored on a smaller scale with the body's own reflexes and responses, so that when the body is deprived in certain ways, in something like extreme cold, for example, when it's you know, when you're very, very cold, the body will channel resources, heat resources, to the center of the body to keep the vital organs going at the expense of the limbs. So you might, you know, lose fingers and toes to gangrene, but you won't die, at least as long as you're not out there too long. So that sense in which adversity, either violence or extreme adverse conditions, causes a retraction of the protective mechanisms toward the center. This seems to be, I think it has a sort of logical underpinning within adaptive evolution. And I think it also is mirrored in terms of how we treat, how we regard ourselves in relation to others. And this has been, I think, pretty well expounded by better people than me, that as we have family and as we have friends, we start to extend that sense of protection to others. We sort of open out to other people. So we advance that the protective franchise, the moral franchise, if you like, to those closest to us in genetic terms, our family, or closest to us in community terms, which tends to be our friends. And it's probably the mark of a developing morality that one extends that franchise, the moral franchise, wider and wider. I think Richard Dawkins and Steven Pinker, I think somewhere else, talk about the shifting moral zeitgeist. But I prefer myself to think of it as a kind of widening moral franchise, that we start to include more and more entities in the circle of our awareness. So when we're under threat, we might not even include our own limbs. When we're not under threat, of course our whole body is included, and then that extends out as the threat reduces to our family, to our friends, to the wider world, and even perhaps to non-human and even non-living entities, so we can start to feel sort of a sense of moral obligation to things like the planet even, and that'd be nice. One of the things that being beaten up in a pub in Blackburn, or losing your limbs to gangrene in the Himalayas, tells us though is that under adverse conditions, the boundaries of that franchise are pulled back, possibly pulled back even to inside one's own body, but certainly withdrawn from entities outside of ourselves. So under conditions of lowered resources, or particularly conditions of fear, I think when fear is a major part of any kind of discourse, that encourages to pull the moral boundaries back and decide that certain people aren't, or certain animals probably first, are not part of our moral responsibility, and then certain people and in extreme cases it might just be a very small tribal or family group which we really consider to be ourselves, and everybody else is outside of that moral franchise and can be treated appallingly. And I suppose under very extreme cases we might even withdraw the moral franchise from our friends and family and look after number one. Fear is a big problem, and resources. I think there's a line in a song by it's in one of Bertolt Brecht's plays actually, so I guess it must have been written by Eisner, is it? Which is that the line in the song is something like, "Food is the first thing, morals follow on." And I think what's implied by that is that the extended moral franchise is great, and that's something we should all strive for. But if there isn't resources to maintain it, then fear sets in, and the logic of our adapting pretty much obliges us to rein in that limit to our moral franchise to an ever-decreasing circle. We should live without fear. We should really try to live without fear. I think fear also forces us to try to stockpile resources as well. So not just fear for the present. We should try to live without fear for the future. Try to avoid the temptation to stockpile resources, like bloody squirrels collecting nuts all the time. There isn't going to be a winter. We don't need to worry about that. We should live without fear and extend the moral franchise. Listen to the birds.